Hello there! In this video, we're going to talk about master pages and the different things you can do with master pages, like set up your running headers and running footers. You can see we've got our sample project here, and we've already uploaded our Microsoft Word manuscript and adjusted the styles. And we've also set up our basic page design, like our trim size and our font settings. So now we're going to start setting up our master pages. Let's jump into Chapter 1. You can access your master page settings by choosing the Master Pages option from the first drop-down in the left sidebar. If you aren't familiar with master pages from InDesign, you can think of them as mini page templates that you can apply to the different chapters of your book. Master pages are where you set your page margins, your running headers and footers, and more. Let's go ahead and configure one of our master pages to see how it works. You can see here that there are 5 different master page groups. Chapter, which you'd usually use for your main chapters in your book. Front matter, back matter, part, if you have part pages in your book, and alt front matter. We've found that in many books, there are some front matter sections that need to be set up differently than the others. For example, sections like title pages and half title pages where you don't want to have any running header or footer information, and you might even want to have different margins. Versus sections like your prefaces where you probably do want your running headers and footers, and your margins will probably more closely resemble your chapter margins. We created the alt front matter option as a way to achieve those 2 different types of front matter designs, but you don't actually have to use them only in the front matter. You can use them wherever you want. And we actually used to call this alt front matter master page our clear master page because it was intended to clear the content from all of the margins. And you might still see that clear label pop up in a few places down the line. Now let's expand our chapter master page area. We've got a lot of settings here, and we're going to kind of jump around a bit. So first of all, we're going to set our page margins. There are a few different places where you set these values. First, you'll find the verso margins and recto margins boxes. You can set these the way you would set any other value by just typing a value into the box and choosing a unit. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to set half-inch margins on all of my pages. You can see that Headrest is actually converting my half-inch value to its pixel equivalent, 48 pixels. It is in fact saving that half-inch value in the back end, but because browsers calculate everything based on pixels, it converts your values to pixels here so that everything can line up correctly and all of the measurements can match up. We'll go ahead and set a half-inch margins for our recto pages as well. Now, of course, we want to save. You'll notice that we didn't actually see anything change in the pages in our design preview. Anytime you make changes to the master pages, you actually need to click the Run Layout button before you'll see any changes, since these are really big changes that will affect the page layout of all of your pages. So let's go ahead and run our layout. And there you go. You can see that we've got our half-inch margins on every edge of the page. And you can see it even more clearly if we turn on our guides measurement. There are a couple more margin values that you need to think about. First off, you'll notice that our first page of our chapter has a different margin at the top than all the other pages. It's common practice in a lot of books to have a different margin on the first page of your chapter, to build in a little extra white space to make that first page look nice. We've given you the option to configure those margins separately from your recto and verso margins. If you scroll down a bit further, you'll see this box here, first margin top and first margin bottom. These are the top and bottom values of your first page in your chapter. We specifically don't give you the option to adjust your left and right margins on the first page, because those should be inherited depending on whether that first page is a recto or a verso page. Let's change our first page top margin to 1 inch. And we'll leave our bottom margin at a 1/2 inch so it matches the rest of our pages. Now let's go ahead and save. And we'll run our layout again. And you can see that our first page top margin is now 1 inch. The other big thing that master pages control is your running headers and running footers. If we scroll up just a little bit, you can see that we have options to set the running header and running footer content for our verso and recto pages. Lots of books have different content on the running header of a recto page versus a verso page. For example, they might have the book title on one side and the author name on the other side. There are a few built-in variables that you can use in these content boxes, or you can just go ahead and type in some content. The variables that are built in are based on the content of your book. So, of course, you can use the page number variable, which will calculate the accurate page number based on the final layout of the book. You can also insert the book title and the author name. These values are actually pulled from your title page, depending on whether you have a title on the title page and an author name tagged on the title page. These values will be auto-filled with that content. There are a few quirks when you use these variables, and the biggest one is that you actually won't see it appear in the design preview. You'll only see it appear once you build the book into a PDF. I actually find that it's just as easy to just type the book title or author name right here in this box than to try and use these variables. So that's usually what I do. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, you're required to have something in all of these boxes. And there actually is a special value that you can put in these boxes that tells headerists to leave the running header or running footer blank in a certain area. Right now, I actually do want my book title in the verso run head, so I'm going to start by typing a quotation mark. Then I'm going to type my book title. And I'm going to type another quotation mark. These quotation marks won't appear in the running header, but they're necessary for headerists to recognize that this is static text that I'm typing and not a variable. Now, it's important that you hit enter after you type text here. And our text turns into this gray little bubble. Now we can go ahead and take that book title variable out of our box. Our running footer is configured by default to include the page number, and I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is here. You can also include multiple pieces and combinations of content in your running headers or running footers. So for my recto running header, I want both the author name and a page number. And I want my page number to be positioned towards the outside margin, so on the right side of the running header. So again, I'm going to type a quotation mark, and I'm going to type my author name. And I'm going to go ahead and type a space, and then a dash, and a space, and then another quotation mark. I typed that space and dash and space just to have something to separate my author name from my page number, and you can put any symbol or combination of spaces here. Once again, remember to hit enter, and our text turns into that gray bubble, and we'll get rid of the old author name variable here. And now to include the page number in our running header as well, we'll just click the page number button here, and it shows up in our run head content box. And since I have my page number in my run head, I want to make my run foot on the recto page blank. To do that, simply type the word normal with no quotation marks and hit enter. Then you can get rid of the old content that was there, and this tells headerists to leave that margin blank. Your other variable option is to insert the chapter title into your running header or running footer. This will actually insert the most recent chapter title that has occurred in the book. And it's based on any chapter titles that are tagged in your content. So for example, in our chapter here, we can see that chapter 1 is tagged as a chapter title. So that would be inserted if we used our chapter title variable. And it would presumably be updated with the most recent chapter title in each new chapter. Let's go ahead and save and run our layout so we can take a look at what we've got so far. Now let's scroll down to our Verso and Recto pages, and you can see here we've got our Dracula running header and our page number running footer, and then on the next page we have our Bram Stoker and the page number in the running header and nothing in the running footer, which is just what we wanted. But it doesn't really look very pretty, so let's go ahead and adjust the appearance here. Just below each run head or run foot content box, you also have an alignment box, which you can use to say whether the running header or footer should be aligned towards the left edge of the page or the right edge of the page, or be centered. Let's make our recto run heads and run feet be aligned towards the right side of the page, and our verso run heads and run feet be aligned towards the left side of the page. And while we're making adjustments, let's scroll up to the top and adjust our run head and run foot font and font sizes as well. You can choose any font from the font list, including any custom fonts you have installed. I'm going to go ahead and choose Myriad Condensed. And I'm going to set my font size to 8 points, nice and small. I want my running headers and running footers to be bold as well because the type size is so small. And here, this run head space below option controls how much space appears between the bottom of the running header and the text content. I'm going to reduce this space below because right now our margins are very small, and so this big amount of space is actually pushing our run head a little too close to the trim edge. So I'm going to say we'll just have 6 points between our running header and our text content. Now we'll adjust our running footer font family as well. And again, we'll choose Myriad Pro Condensed to match. And we'll make it 8 points, bold. And between our running footer and our text content here at the bottom, we'll give it another 6 points. Let's save and run our layout. All right, and you can see our page is updated with our new teeny tiny running headers and running footers using that Myriad Pro Condensed font family, and aligned towards the left edge of the page for our Verso pages or our left-hand pages, and towards the right side of the page for our recto or right-hand pages. Now, one thing I'm sure you've noticed already is that our page numbers are filled in with these zeros. Since we're just looking at one chapter at a time, Headerist goes ahead and just puts a placeholder here for your page numbers, but these will be filled in with the accurate page numbers once you build your print PDF. There's one other thing you can configure in your master page options, and that's how to handle blank pages. So by default, when there's a blank page in a section, it's assumed that you don't want your running headers or running footers to show up on that blank page. You want it to be truly blank. But if that's not the case, then you can go ahead and configure the running header and running footer content for those blank pages however you'd like, and they'll inherit all of the design settings that you set up for recto and verso pages as well. We'll go ahead and leave our blank pages truly blank. Now, it's important to note that if you want the pages in your front matter and back matter and parts to match the settings that you have here for your chapter, you actually have to go in and set up the master pages one by one to match. So you'd have to open up your front matter master page section and set the margins to those 1/2 inch margins, set the first page margin to be 1 inch at the top, and set your running headers and running footers to include the same content and to have the same font settings and alignment settings that you set up for your chapters. As we noted before, we have these 5 designations for your master pages, but you can actually set a chapter or section to use any master page you want. And the way that you do that is you go to the Sections and Text option from the drop-down menu, and you choose whatever section type you're looking at. And here you see you only have a few options to change which master page you're using, whether or not to start new chapters on a recto, and whether you want to restart the page numbering at 1 for just this section. Now, bear in mind that if you change the master page here, you'll actually be changing which master page is used for every chapter in the book, not just this specific chapter. And that's something that we should probably update. But for the time being, be very careful when you use this option. And that's the basics for master pages.